Today's talk is entitled Archaeology, Heritage, and the Civil War in Sudan. The Civil War in Sudan, as you know, began in April of this year. What threats does it pose to the archaeological sites, museums, and monuments? And what can archaeologists do in Sudan and internationally to mitigate this potential damage? In this talk, Geoff Emberling, our associate research scientist here at the Kelsey Museum and faculty at the University of Michigan's Department of Middle East Studies, will outline efforts that the Kelsey Museum's team has been making to support colleagues and communities that it has been working with in Sudan. And so now I'm going to turn over the talk to Geoff Emberling. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi, everyone. Great to see so many friends, colleagues, international colleagues, and my mother. Hi, Mom, listening to this talk. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I know that we're trying to save a chunk of time for discussion at the end, so I will try to just outline the issues as I see them right at the moment. Let me just, yeah, there we go. Okay. So as most of you know, the last few years have been incredibly difficult and challenging for Sudan. There had been hope in the country after a popular revolution overthrew a military dictator in 2019, but there was a military coup in October of 2021. And then in April of this year, a civil war started between the Sudanese army and a militia known as the Rapid Support Force. Oh, let me just see. How is this working? There we go. Currently, fighting is concentrated in the capital city of Khartoum and the western region of Darfur, whose name is internationally known for the genocide perpetuated there in the 2000s. Millions of Sudanese have fled those areas and have resettled as internally displaced people in other areas of the country. And a much smaller number has been able to leave Sudan entirely. I'm just going to take a second and mute everybody there. Sudan has disappeared essentially from international media coverage, but the fighting and killing of civilians continues there every day. I've directed a Kelsey Museum archaeological and conservation project in northern Sudan over the past 10 years that is focused on a capital city of ancient Kush at Jebel Barkal. You can see it marked there on the map. And a nearby royal pyramid cemetery of kings and queens of ancient Kush at El Kuru, which are both part of a larger UNESCO World Heritage Site. Our team has been to Sudan in all but one of the last 5 winter seasons. The exception was canceled because of the COVID pandemic. So we've had a close look at political turmoil in the country in these years. As many of you will know, archaeology was founded as a colonial discipline that initially aimed to extract goods and knowledge from sites for the benefit of European and American museums, universities, and people. Our team is one of a number of archaeological projects across the world, but also in Sudan, that is aiming to work in an anti-colonial mode that works closely together with local communities and professional colleagues and shares information and benefits of our work widely. This collaborative approach has positioned us well to contribute to addressing challenges to cultural heritage protection in Sudan during the current crisis. So what are the challenges to cultural heritage during wartime, and how can we be concerned about objects when so many people are suffering? We have seen this challenge play out repeatedly in the Middle East and North African region over the last 20 years or so. With the destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas in Afghanistan by the Taliban in 2001, the looting of the Iraq Museum in Baghdad, and the massive looting of archaeological sites in Iraq after the US-led invasion in 2003, looting of museums in Egypt during and after the Arab Spring in 2011, and further looting of sites and destruction of numerous monuments during the civil war in Syria, including at Palmyra in Syria by ISIS in 2015. I mention these other cases in order to help us think about the nature of the threat to sites, monuments, and museums in Sudan during the present civil war. Although there is certainly an Islamist element in Sudanese politics, they have not prioritized destruction of monuments, unlike what we've seen in some of these other cases. And there has never been a robust trade in antiquities from Sudan, unlike Egypt or Iraq, even if occasional pieces from Sudan have certainly appeared on the international market. I personally, and some of my colleagues on this call may wish to take some of these points up in the discussion. I personally would assess the current threat being greatest to the National Museum in Khartoum and other museums in Khartoum, which are currently in control of the militia group. Protecting these museums would require a military operation far beyond what archaeologists like me can organize, unfortunately. A broader threat to cultural heritage is that the government of Sudan stopped paying almost all government employees when the civil war began. And this includes all employees of Sudan's Antiquities Department, which is called the National Corporation for Antiquities and Museums, or NCAM. There's been an admirable effort led by the Director General of NCAM, Dr. Ibrahim Musa, along with colleagues Michael Mallinson and Julie Anderson, to find international funding to support NCAM employees, including, crucially, site guards who would not be able to fight off armed looters necessarily, but who can monitor and call attention to any damage to sites, monuments, or museums. This has been a challenging effort because of the scale of funding needed, but international organizations, including UNESCO and the Elite Foundation, have provided some emergency funding. A new US-based organization that I'm involved with, called the American Sudanese Archaeological Research Center, has also been able to provide more modest support. So by contrast with these international organizations, archaeological projects are more directly involved with specific sites. Ideally, we have developed close relationships with local archaeologists and communities, and we're better situated than these larger organizations to identify local needs and respond quickly to them. The Kelsey Museum project began its community-engaged archaeological work at El Kuru in 2015. This is a longer story, and if you're interested, you can read more about it in recent Kelsey Museum newsletters. But with community support, we have been rebuilding an abandoned house in the village next to the site. Can you see the pyramid in the background there? For use as a community heritage center with local staff, including our colleague Anwar Mahjoub, who is the curator of the center. The war stopped our final construction work. You can see we were ready to finish and haven't quite been able to. But we have finished the educational area of the center, and we've been able to welcome classes even as the wartime goes on, so that they can be engaged with the site, have enriched education, and learn more about local history and heritage. Another threat to archaeological monuments in particular, is the large number of internally displaced people who have fled Khartoum and are now living next to the sites. Housing is tight, food supplies can be short, and there is no work or school for most of these refugees. One of our young colleagues in El Kuru, Ibrahim Sid Ahmed, sent us this photo as he wrote a blog piece about life in the village under these conditions. Just to be clear, and you can see all the people climbing on top of the pyramid there. Just to be clear, it can be remarkably damaging to pyramids for people to climb them. You knock down stones and they roll down and they break other stones. And they're technically not allowed to climb the pyramids. But it also turns out that the top of the pyramid provides the best cell phone reception in the village. And people are drawn to it for that reason. It's always made me wonder if it's really true that pyramids are actually a form of intergalactic communication, but I'll leave that to you to decide for yourself. We've had similar problems recently at the nearby and much larger site of Jebel Barkal, where site protection is such that people can still drive their cars on the site, and the numbers of visitors are far greater than existing infrastructure, particularly site guards, can handle. Our very good friend Sami El-Amin is the interim manager for Jebel Barkal and the surrounding area, which is a vast job in the best of times, but nearly impossible with no money and increased demands on his time. So my project has been talking with Sami about how our existing grant funding, particularly a generous grant from the U.S. State Department's Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation, can support site protection in the current crisis. Sami has had a lot of great ideas. We're planning to expand our community engagement efforts at the site and in the adjacent town of Karima. Sami has just had a first event that focused on children who are living in local refugee camps. He gave them a tour of the site museum, told them about the ancient history, organized craft activities and lunch, and then walked them around the site, including to the 2,000-year-old pyramids. I think it's interesting in this slide that the children are all waving Sudanese flags, even during this civil war. The connection between ancient cultures and modern ones is not so straightforward in Sudan, given the immense ethnic diversity of the country, and also the preference among some Muslims to trace their ancestry back to the Arabian Peninsula. But the possibility of ancient cultures serving as a symbol to help unify the country has been an idea in Sudan, at least since they chose archaeology to be the field represented in their national museum. We have also been looking for ways to employ as many archaeologists in the region as possible to support them, our archaeologist friends and colleagues who are also unemployed, and we would like to fund them, not just because they're our friends and colleagues, but also because we're very concerned about the state of infrastructure for protection of archaeological sites in Sudan now and going into the future. One part of our Ambassadors Fund project was to begin to remove massive piles of excavation back dirt left on the site by excavations of George Reisner, who dug there in 1916 to 1920. Although he was an excellent archaeologist in many ways, Reisner dug very quickly, and it turns out that his back dirt is quite rich in objects. We started this project in the winter of 2023, and here you see some of our local guys screening back dirt. And we immediately started finding gold foil and ceremonial arrowheads in the back dirt. A visiting film crew caught the arrowhead moment, and it's now shown on Discovery's Expedition Unknown, if you're interested. So we're going to expand this part of our work as a way to make it move more quickly, but also to employ as many local archaeologists and local workers as we can. And this part of our project is beginning tomorrow. I'm getting close to the end of my time, so let me close with a list of some of our other ideas. We want to consider all the visitors to the site being not just a threat to preservation of the site, but also an opportunity for engagement with them. So we're going to hire and train tour guides who will be available to talk with visitors around the site and who will also be able to help us monitor and protect the site itself. We're going to begin hosting community events on the site, concerts, poetry readings, lectures that will all also include an educational component. And we also hope that we'll be able to continue our physical conservation work on the temples of Jebel Barkal as we started in winter 2023. Our head conservator, Suzanne Davis, and NCAM conservator El Muntasser Dafalla, who you can see El Muntasser there in the yellow shirt, have a plan in place and have trained staff to continue this work. So just a final thought. It can sometimes seem that archaeologists and conservators in these situations care more about objects than about people. I hope that this brief talk has shown that this is really a false dichotomy. Because of our professions, we are inclined to start with objects in monuments and museums. But if we're working in a collaborative way with colleagues and communities, working with objects also means helping people. Thank you very much.